Hey guys, what's up? It's me, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to draw the human assault rifle from Halo 3. So for today's drawing tutorial, all you really need is a simple pencil with an eraser, a handy dandy pencil sharpener, of course, your handy dandy ruler, which will be an important thing in this drawing tutorial, and last but not least, your Master Chief action figure. It's an action figure, not a doll. Get it right. Let's get started, gamers. So, first thing I want you to do is find a good spot on your paper. Looks like I found a good spot on my paper, and now I'm going to go ahead and make a nice straight line across the sheet. Now, this is going to represent our baseline for our assault rifle. Now, trust me, you want to make this because it's the most important part of making your assault rifle. It helps us put in three distinctive features of this gun: the stock, the middle section, and also further going along, the third and final head of the gun. So going on to the stock is basically like an awkwardly formed pyramid type shape, if you will. It's roundish at the bottom, but at the sides and on the top it's square. This is kind of like the stock / gripping area, since we're going to make a hole through the stock down the bottom. But when you're making the open hole for the gripping, it basically, you want to make it below, touching the line, but below our little ruler line we just made earlier. Now, this line we made with our ruler, our baseline, basically goes throughout the whole gun and pretty much makes it easier for us to make square-like shapes that separate from each other and connect to each other without actually having to make a straight line ourselves without a ruler, of course. Now, this straight line is not going to be a perfect straight line. Of course, as we go forming the assault rifle, we're going to go ahead and shape in the line and make it more grittier, if you will, that goes along with the actual form of the gun. So this is actually going to be a baseline where we're not really going to erase. Now, that's pretty much it for the middle section, at least for the sketching aspect. And this is where we're going to go ahead and make these squares, and basically this consists of squares and long rectangular-like shapes. Now this is a good example, this is a good chunk of the body of the gun where it consists of variations of blocky-like shapes. So guys, feel free at any time to pause the video and observe. Or, if you have Google Images or Bing on standby, you can look at that for help as well. Now, of course, in some sections, rarely we'll have to erase our little ruler line, but for the most part, we don't really have to. Now, this is where we're going to go ahead and make the basically pump-like shape for the assault rifle. Going towards the bottom, in my opinion, kind of looks like a shotgun, but it's not really a shotgun, it's actually an assault rifle. So we're almost done with the middle section right here. And to be honest with you, this gun doesn't really consist of many shapes. If there are many shapes to you, then don't worry, they're pretty simple. Now this is where we're going to go ahead and make the top part of the gun. Go ahead and make a line slanted upwards, and this is where we're going to make a long line, a slope-like line going downwards. Now make sure it's a good size for the head of the gun. Now this is really going to be a nice, cool, futuristic-like design for this gun. I really do like the designs of these guns, and also melee weapons, like for example the energy sword and the gravity hammer. I love designs of them. especially the nice looking ancient markings on the gravity hammer. I love making those. So don't worry about any rough lines, it is a sketch, however. Now to wrap it up, go ahead and make a long little barrel for the gun. You gotta have a barrel in order for Master Chief to shoot those brutes in Covenant in the head. And also there's a short fat barrel going down to the bottom. Now this is another part where the ruler line actually helps us with. So yeah, you can see that the our baseline really does play a nice, huge role in forming our assault rifle. Now, like I said earlier, you don't really have to actually erase the line, since it actually is an actual detail in this gun. Just that we're not going to keep it a straight, perfect line, of course. We're going to have to darken it a little bit and make it look like it coexists with the actual gun. And it's not like a simple baseline we made earlier. We're going to transform it. Now this is where we're going to make more block-like shapes for this stock. Now this is the part of my video where we're going to add in the juicy details. Which I love adding details in drawings. I mean, you can't have a drawing of a gun or a car or a human or whatever without adding details. Now what I notice in these guns, especially this human assault rifle, is that it has little unusual like shapes. Now you don't have to. Instead of making that moon-like shape and that popcorn-looking like shape by it, you can make like scratch marks, which I also made, but I also made these weird-looking shapes. Now, are they markings? Are they supposed to mean something? I don't know. So yeah, going towards the bottom of the stock, right, or going towards the back of the stock, I should say, is basically where we're going to go ahead and form most of the blocky-like shapes for this section of the gun. Now yes, this consists of a lot of straight lines, but what I do for straight lines is basically make a rough, rigid-like line, and I basically slowly go across or down when making these types of lines. Now of course, when I go further into the drawing, I erase some of the rigid lines and make it more straighter. So that's what you want to do after you make these rigid-like lines, because making these rigid-like lines will help you make straight looking lines. Now they're not going to be perfectly straight, but they're going to look, really look like they're actual perfect like straight lines. Now of course, when you're doing that, clean up any rigid or messy lines you have going outwards, or intercepting other shapes of the gun, or pretty much anything. You always want to clean up after a rough sketch. That's the most important part in making a really cool drawing. Now, like all guns, they consist of their tiny little details. For example, those circles I made not too long ago are basically, I would say, maybe bolts or screws in holding the pieces together. And those square-like shapes down below, I'm not really too sure. But the designer or artist of this gun really had a nice imagination, and maybe he had experience with actual assault rifles, and basically made that interpreted an assault rifle that looks realistic but has characteristics of its own that makes it look like a cool, futuristic-like assault rifle. And that's what I really do enjoy and appreciate about these guns, is that they look really cool, and they look like they belong in such a universe like Halo. Now guys, if this looks complicated, don't worry, there's nothing complicated to it. It's basically just simple square-like shapes. And you're having trouble, don't crumple up the piece of paper. Just continue, have patience. I believe in you. Yeah, patience is key for this gun. Now, some people will have maybe a breeze making this gun, but for others it will be really complicated. But I would recommend, before making this gun, when you're having trouble making square-like shapes or rectangular-like shapes, don't worry, you're not bad at drawing. No one's really bad, honestly. But you might want to if you feel like you really need it, go ahead and practice on a different sheet of scrap paper, if you will, making square-like shapes. For this type of gun, I would recommend making a big square and then gradually go down, making smaller and smaller squares. And also, like I said, when making straight lines, I don't make a perfect straight line going all the way across the paper. I basically go ahead and make long marks that are going along the paper, which will form my line, and then I just basically go over it with the pencil, and I erase any rough, rigid-like lines, and basically shape it up to make it look neater. It's kind of like cleaning up after a rough sketch, which is what we're doing right now. Now we're getting close to finishing up the gripping on the gun right here. This is kind of like the pump little mechanism that's going to call for it. Now, you can't really use this pump mechanism in the gun, since when Master Chief reloads it, he doesn't really pump it back. I just call it pump action type of shape, just for indication. This is a simple little phrase to, indicate a shape, if you will. Now this is where we're going to go ahead and shapen the head, which basically you want to make 3 lines going down. Now this will separate it in 3 squares, and the 4th shape right there is basically just going down all the way, drooping to the front of the gun. Now, right there where I'm drawing would be the ammo counter, but since we're looking at a side view, sadly we can't look at the ammo counter. Which, if you don't know what I'm talking about, and if you don't know what this gun is, where it's from, you have never played any Halo game in your life. Now, of course, for your line, for our baseline that we made earlier, I said you don't really have to erase it if you don't want to, but if it's extending out of the gun, of course you want to erase it, just so it won't look too goofy. And of course, there's little bolts and little circle-like shapes here and there, pretty much in kind of not really particularly random places, but in certain types of places. So guys, when we really get down to it, this assault rifle just consists of nothing but basic square-like shapes, rounded-like shapes. It's really just comes down to perspective and also proportion. And trust me, the baseline helps with this. Now, this might look like a bit, kind of a bigger assault rifle. Probably looks like the biggest drawing I made in the Halo Weapons series, but really, I just made a medium-sized assault rifle. Now, the baseline really helps us with making proportions and making the size that we want, whether you want to make a small human assault rifle, medium-sized human assault rifle, a really big human assault rifle, and when you're making a really big human assault rifle or a really big drawing in general, you want to have a good, big sheet of paper, of course, for that kind of size. Now this is where we're going to go ahead and color our gun. We're not going to leave it wide. We want to color in, darken our gun, and make it look really detailed. So basically, for the stock and also the pump-like, for the pump action-like shape at the bottom, they're both they're the darkest shapes in this drawing. Now, if you want to go for a more realistic standard, go ahead and consider your light source. For example, as you can see on my right side, I'm using a lamp which is shining light. So I would darken in, shapes that are not too exposed to the light in a much more darkened-like tone or texture, if you will. It's all about using good darks and good grays, darks, lights, and a nice Faber-Castell pencil set will work great for this, but you don't need it. I'm using a mechanical pencil, and this was really simple to do. And also, feel free to move your paper at any direction. Like, for example, I had to fix up some lines I was talking about earlier, and that's what I had to do right there. Just go ahead and find a good angle to make my straight lines. So guys, that's pretty much it. Like I said before, feel free to pause the video, observe everything. I hope this was really a good tutorial for you guys. And hey, there's a certain hero right there with an assault rifle. Alright guys, well that's it. I hope you enjoy. Have a nice day. Press start to draw, signing out.